I always thought my family was like any other. Quiet, ordinary, maybe even boring. But Chloe, my older sister, never saw it that way. She had this habit of pulling me aside late at night, when the house was dark, and whispering things that made my stomach twist. "Emma," she said one evening as we lay in our shared room, the glow from the streetlight cutting across her face. "You can't trust Mom and Dad." I frowned, hugging my pillow. "What are you talking about? They're our parents." Her voice was low, urgent. "Promise me you'll remember this. Promise me you'll question everything." I laughed nervously, trying to brush her off. Chloe always had a flair for the dramatic, but the look in her eyes that night wasn't playful. It was deadly serious. The kind of look that burned into you and refused to fade. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She laughed at breakfast, teased me about my messy hair, and helped Margaret with the dishes, but I couldn't shake her warning. It hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. Years passed, and Chloe's whispers grew louder, more insistent. Sometimes she'd corner me in the hallway, her eyes darting toward the closed living room door where our parents sat. "They're hiding something, Emma. One day you'll see it. Just be ready." I tried asking her what she meant, but she always shook her head. "You're not ready yet." By the time I was 17, Chloe had become distant, almost restless, like she was carrying a secret too heavy for her shoulders. Then, one day, she was gone. Margaret and David said she'd left for college early, but something about their explanation felt wrong. There was no goodbye note, no call, not even a hint of where she'd gone. Just an empty room and silence. That night, I found a folded scrap of paper tucked under my pillow. In Chloe's handwriting, it read, "Don't believe what they tell you. Watch them closely, and never, ever trust them." I stared at those words until dawn, my heart pounding, knowing my life was about to unravel in ways I couldn't imagine. After Chloe vanished, the house felt colder, like someone had sucked the warmth right out of it. Margaret and David carried on as if nothing had changed, but their smiles were tighter, their eyes harder. At dinner, Margaret served her usual roast chicken, humming softly, but her gaze flicked toward me too often, sharp and watchful. David chewed in silence, his fork scraping against the plate in an endless rhythm that made my skin crawl. "Have you heard from Chloe?" I asked, trying to sound casual. David's eyes froze on mine. For a second too long, the room was silent. Then Margaret answered for him, her voice smooth. "Of course, sweetheart. She's busy with her new life. You know how college is, but I didn't know." Because Chloe hadn't told me she was leaving. She hadn't told me anything, except that warning. That night, I crept into her empty room. It smelled faintly of her lavender perfume, but the closet was bare, the drawers stripped clean. Almost too clean, like someone had carefully erased her. I sat on her bed, clutching the note I'd found under my pillow. "Don't believe what they tell you." The words burned into my mind. The next morning, I tried calling Chloe's number, but it went straight to voicemail. When I asked Margaret for the address of her dorm, she deflected with a tight smile. "Oh, she'll reach out when she's settled." Don't worry yourself, but I did worry. Every minute of every day. At school, Ryan noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "You okay, Em?" he asked, leaning against my locker. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." But he didn't buy it. Ryan had been my best friend since we were kids. He knew me too well. "This is about Chloe, isn't it?" I swallowed hard. She didn't even say goodbye. "And my parents?" I lowered my voice. "They're acting weird. Like they don't want me asking questions." Ryan frowned. "That's not normal. Maybe they're hiding something." The way he said it made my stomach flip. Chloe's warnings echoed louder than ever. That night, lying in bed, I listened to the murmur of my parents' voices through the thin walls. Their words were muffled, but the tone was sharp, urgent. I pressed my ear to the wall and caught a phrase that made my blood run cold. "She can't find out the truth. Not yet." The words replayed in my head all night. "She can't find out the truth. Not yet." I tossed and turned, every nerve buzzing. What truth were they hiding? And why did Chloe want me to know before they did? By morning, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't just sit around waiting for answers. I had to start digging. I began small. At breakfast, I watched them closely. Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes, and David avoided looking at me altogether. When I asked if Chloe had called again, Margaret quickly changed the subject to my grades. That only made me more suspicious. After school, I went straight into Chloe's room again. I searched every corner, under the bed, behind the dresser, inside the vent cover. At first, nothing, but then I noticed one of the floorboards near her window looked slightly warped. My hands shook as I pried it open. Inside was a small notebook, its cover worn and frayed. Chloe's handwriting covered the pages, messy and hurried. My heart pounded as I flipped through. Most of it was fragmented thoughts, short entries about how she didn't trust Margaret and David, how she overheard their late-night arguments, how she caught them hiding documents in the locked cabinet in Dad's office. But one line stood out, written in bold, shaky letters. If anything happens to me, Emma needs to know they're not who they say they are. My throat went dry. I slammed the notebook shut, terrified my parents would barge in and catch me. That evening, I texted Ryan a picture of the entry. He called me instantly. "Emma, this is huge. She didn't just leave. Something happened," I whispered into the phone, my eyes darting toward the hallway. "They're hiding something in Dad's office." Chloe wrote about it. Ryan didn't hesitate. "Then we need to find out what it is." Tonight the plan formed quickly. After my parents went to bed, Ryan would sneak over and we'd break into the office together. As I lay awake waiting for the house to go silent, Chloe's words echoed in my head like a drumbeat. They're not who they say they are. And for the first time, I wondered if Margaret and David were even my parents at all. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I waited until I heard Margaret and David's bedroom door click shut, then slipped downstairs with my phone flashlight clutched tightly in my hand. Ryan tapped on the back door a few minutes later, his hood pulled up, eyes wide with nerves. "You sure about this?" he whispered. "No," I admitted, "but I have to know." We crept to David's office, the one room in the house he always kept locked. I'd seen him go in late at night and emerge hours later, his face drawn and tense. Chloe's journal had mentioned it more than once. I reached into the junk drawer in the kitchen where he kept spare keys. My hands trembled as I tried them one by one until, click. The door swung open. The office smelled of leather and old paper. Shelves lined with books loomed over us, and in the center sat a heavy oak desk. Ryan pulled out his phone for light. "Where do we start?" I remembered Chloe's words. Documents hidden in the locked cabinet. We found it tucked beneath the desk, small but solid. Of course, it needed a key. I was about to give up when Ryan crouched down and fished a bobby pin from his pocket. "My sister taught me this trick," he muttered. With a few twists, the lock clicked open. Inside were neat stacks of folders, each labeled with numbers and dates. I pulled one out, flipping it open. My breath hitched. Birth certificates, but not just mine, multiple ones. Some had names I didn't recognize. Others were clearly forged, the details inconsistent. And then I found Chloe's, but it was wrong. The date of birth didn't match what she always celebrated. Her last name wasn't even the same. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Ryan scanned the papers, his eyes widening. "Emma, this looks like they were hiding different identities, like they've been living under fake names." A wave of nausea hit me. Chloe had been right all along. Margaret and David weren't who they claimed to be. And if that was true, then what had really happened to my sister? Ryan and I sifted through the folders in stunned silence, the weight of what we'd uncovered pressing down on us. Fake names, altered dates. It felt like I'd stumbled into someone else's nightmare. Then Ryan froze, holding up a manila envelope. "Emma, look at this." My heart pounded as I took it from him. The envelope wasn't labeled like the others. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Some were of me and Chloe as little kids, playing in the yard, sitting at the kitchen table. But they weren't casual snapshots. They looked staged, almost like surveillance pictures. "This is creepy," Ryan muttered, flipping through. "Who even took these?" At the bottom of the stack was a single photo that made my stomach drop. It was of Chloe, but not from years ago. It was recent. She looked older, tired, and scared. And it wasn't taken in our house. She was sitting in what looked like a dimly lit room, a blanket draped over her shoulders. I clutched the photo, my hands shaking. "She's not at college." "Ryan, they're hiding her." Ryan's jaw tightened. "We need to get out of here, now." But just as he said it, the floorboards upstairs creaked. My blood turned to ice. We scrambled to shove the papers and photos back into the cabinet, locking it quickly. I shoved Chloe's picture into my pocket, just as footsteps echoed down the stairs. "Emma," Margaret's voice cut through the dark. Too calm, too controlled. "What are you doing awake?" I snapped off my flashlight, whispering to Ryan, "Hide." He slipped behind the curtains as I stepped out of the office, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I couldn't sleep," I said, hugging myself. "I came down for water." Margaret's eyes lingered on the closed office door, then back to me. For a moment, her smile faltered. "You should be in bed." "Yes, Mom." The word tasted wrong on my tongue. She studied me, like she knew I was lying. Then finally turned and walked back upstairs. The second her footsteps faded, Ryan slipped out, his face pale. "Emma, this is bigger than we thought." I nodded, gripping the photo in my pocket. Chloe wasn't gone. She was out there somewhere. And my so-called parents were keeping her from me. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chloe's face in that photo, haunted, fragile, alive. My parents had lied. They hadn't just hidden the truth. They were hiding her. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. Ryan agreed we needed someone older, someone who might know what was really going on. That's when I thought of Mr. Walker, our neighbor. He'd lived on the street for decades, always kind but strangely watchful when it came to our family. Ryan and I walked over after school. Mr. Walker answered the door with his usual warm smile, but it faltered when he saw the look on my face. "Emma?" "What's wrong?" I hesitated, then pulled the crumpled photo of Chloe from my pocket and held it out. "Do you know anything about this? About my parents?" His eyes widened, and for a second he looked almost guilty. He ushered us inside quickly, shutting the door behind us. "You weren't supposed to find out this way," he muttered. Running a hand over his face, my chest tightened. "So it's true. They're lying to me." Mr. Walker sighed heavily, sinking into his armchair. "Emma, your parents, Margaret and David, aren't who they say they are. They've been living under false identities for years. And Chloe, she figured it out before you did." I felt my knees go weak. Ryan grabbed my arm to steady me. "Why would they lie about who they are?" Mr. Walker's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because they're hiding from people who would do anything to find them." Dangerous people, my mind reeled. And Chloe? She started asking questions they didn't want answered. She came to me a few months ago, scared. She suspected the truth, and she was right. But before she could dig deeper, she disappeared. I stared at him in shock. "Are you saying my parents had something to do with it?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, his eyes flicked to the window, like he feared someone was listening. "Emma, you need to be careful. If you push too hard, you could end up just like Chloe." The warning settled in my chest like ice. My sister hadn't just left. She had been silenced. And now I was next in line to uncover what they were desperate to keep hidden. Mr. Walker's warning echoed in my head the whole walk home. If you push too hard, you could end up just like Chloe. But how could I stop? My sister had risked everything to uncover the truth. I couldn't let her down. Ryan was quieter than usual, his hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets. Finally, he said, "Emma, maybe he's right. Maybe this is too dangerous." I stopped in my tracks. "So we just do nothing?" Pretend Chloe's gone and let my parents keep lying. He shook his head. No, but we need to be smart about it. That night, after Margaret and David went to bed, Ryan and I snuck back into the office. We searched more carefully this time, looking for anything we missed. After nearly an hour, I found a locked drawer at the bottom of the bookshelf. Another lock, Ryan groaned, pulling out his bobby pin again. This one was tougher, but after a few tense minutes, click. Inside were more folders, but these weren't birth certificates. They were reports, dossiers, photos of people I didn't recognize, stapled to pages filled with dates, locations, coded notes. This looks like surveillance, Ryan whispered. My fingers trembled as I flipped through. Then I froze. One folder had Chloe's name scrawled across the front. Inside were pages of notes about her schedule, her grades, even her friends' names. Every detail of her life, recorded and cataloged. At the back was a page stamped in red. Transfer completed. My stomach lurched. What does that mean? Transfer where? Ryan's face was pale. Emma, I think they moved her somewhere, like she was part of some kind of operation. The word made me sick. My sister wasn't a person to them. She was a file, a project, a secret they needed to control. Before I could process it, I heard the floorboards upstairs creak again. My heart stopped. Ryan hissed, "We need to hide, now!" We shoved the folders back, slammed the drawer shut, and slipped into the closet just as the office door handle began to turn. Through the sliver of light, I saw David step into the room, his expression cold and calculating, and in his hand was the very photo of Chloe I thought I'd hidden. My breath caught as David turned the photo over in his hands. His sharp eyes scanned the room like a predator sensing prey. Ryan and I stayed perfectly still in the cramped closet, my heart thundering so loudly I was sure he could hear it. He set the photo on the desk, then opened the very drawer we had just rifled through. My stomach clenched. If he noticed even the slightest thing out of place, we were finished. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, David closed the drawer, but his posture was rigid. He knew something wasn't right. He lingered by the desk, staring at the photo one last time before slipping it into his pocket. Then, without a word, he left the office, his footsteps slow and deliberate, as he climbed the stairs. I exhaled shakily, nearly collapsing with relief. Ryan whispered, "That was way too close." But instead of relief, dread pooled in my chest. "He knows," I said. "He knows someone's been in here." We slipped out of the closet and locked the office again before sneaking back into my room. My mind raced as I replayed the look on David's face. Suspicious, cold, calculating. Ryan paced the floor. "Emma, you can't stay here. If they even suspect you're snooping, I can't just leave," I hissed. "Not until I know where Chloe is." I pulled the photo of Chloe back out of my pocket. The image burned into my mind. Her eyes weren't just tired, they were begging. She needed me. The next morning, breakfast felt different. Margaret and David sat across from me, sipping coffee, pretending everything was normal. But Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes, and David's gaze lingered on me a little too long. "Sleep well, sweetheart," Margaret asked casually, though her tone was sharp beneath the sweetness. I forced a nod, gripping my spoon to keep my hands from shaking. "Yeah, fine," Ryan's words echoed in my head. "You can't stay here." He was right, but I couldn't abandon Chloe. As soon as I got to school, I pulled Ryan aside. "We have to figure out where transfer completed means. That's the key. If we find that out, we find Chloe." Ryan's expression was grim, but he nodded. "Then we dig deeper. Even if it means going somewhere your parents don't want us to." And deep down, I knew that place was closer than either of us wanted to believe. Ryan and I spent lunch in the library, huddled over the few notes we had managed to jot down before David walked in. Most of it was numbers, codes, and strange abbreviations that didn't make sense. But one thing stood out, a series of dates paired with what looked like addresses. I pointed at the most recent one, written next to Chloe's name. "This has to be connected to the transfer." Ryan leaned closer, frowning. "That's not an address I recognize." but it looks like it's in the industrial district. The industrial district was the last place I'd ever expect my parents to go. Empty warehouses, old factories, half the buildings condemned. Why would they be connected to a place like that? We should check it out, I whispered, my stomach twisting. Ryan hesitated. Emma, this could be a trap. What if your parents left that note there on purpose? I shook my head. Chloe risked everything to warn me. If this is where she was transferred, then I have to know. That evening, after making up an excuse about a study group, Ryan and I took the bus downtown and walked the rest of the way. The streets grew quieter, emptier, until we were standing in front of a rusted warehouse with broken windows and a chain-link fence. This is it, I whispered, clutching the photo of Chloe in my pocket like a talisman. Ryan rattled the fence. Locked. He glanced around, then pointed to a gap near the back where the fence sagged. We squeezed through, our footsteps echoing against the cracked pavement. The warehouse loomed over us, its paint peeling, its doors chained shut. But one side door was newer, with a heavy padlock that looked recently installed. Ryan crouched by it, his bobby pin already in hand. Who puts a brand new lock on a condemned building, he muttered. My throat tightened. Someone who doesn't want to be found. A click echoed in the silence. The lock gave way. Ryan pushed the door open, and the smell of dust and something metallic hit us. We stepped inside, and my breath caught. Rows of filing cabinets stretched into the darkness, each marked with codes, like the ones in my father's office. And at the far end of the room, a single door glowed faintly with light seeping from the cracks. Ryan whispered, Emma? What if she's in there? I didn't answer. My shaking hands already reached for the handle. The glowing door loomed before me, its faint light spilling into the warehouse like a secret daring me to uncover it. My pulse pounded in my ears as I reached for the handle. For a second, my courage faltered. What if Chloe wasn't inside? Or worse, what if she was, but not the way I remembered her? Ryan gave me a small nod. Whatever's behind that door, we face it together. I twisted the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a stark, windowless room. At first it looked empty, just white walls and a single table covered in papers, but then I heard it, soft breathing from the corner. My heart nearly stopped. Chloe? My voice cracked as I stepped inside. There she was. My sister sat slumped in a chair, her wrists loosely bound, her hair tangled, her eyes hollow but alive. She blinked at me in disbelief, like she thought I was a dream. Emma. Her voice was hoarse, fragile. I ran to her, fumbling with the ropes. Tears blurred my vision. I found you. I found you. Ryan hovered by the door, his eyes darting nervously. We need to hurry. If your parents know we're here, they'll be coming. As the ropes fell away, Chloe grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. You don't understand. They're not just hiding me, they're hiding from something bigger. They'll never let you walk away knowing the truth. Her words sent a chill down my spine. What truth? Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse. Heavy, deliberate, Ryan's face drained of color. They're here! Chloe's grip tightened. Listen to me, Emma. Whatever you do, don't trust them. Not a word, not a smile. They'll twist everything. And if they catch you... The footsteps grew louder. I pulled Chloe to her feet, draping her arm over my shoulder. Ryan shut the glowing door behind us, plunging the room into darkness. In the distance, David's voice called out, calm and steady. Emma, I know you're here. It's time we had a talk. My stomach turned. No, this wasn't going to be a talk. This was going to be a reckoning. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to face them.